Nvidia stock is gaining a lot of investor attention because of the rising effectiveness of artificial intelligence. What's more, Nvidia's revenue is soaring by more than 100%. Its earnings per share is soaring by more than 600%. So these stock price predictions, if this kind of growth rate continues, could be extraordinarily high for Nvidia stock investors. In fact, I'm going to make my stock price prediction for where I think Nvidia stock price could end up by the year 2030. So let's take a look at my stock price prediction for Nvidia stock. I want to take a moment to thank the sponsor of this video. Moomoo is a trading platform that allows individuals to buy and sell stocks and other investments. I posted the link to Moomoo in the description below. If you use that link to sign up at Moomoo, it will help support my channel. More importantly, you can get special incentive for using my link. One of my favorite features of the Moomoo app is the stock screener. Let me show you how it works. So you all know I like to look for companies with a high operating profit margin. So in the Moomoo app, I can search for stocks that have an operating profit margin I'm looking for. So in the screener, I add a filter and I could type in here operating profit margin, and I prefer the trailing 12-month operating margin. I click add, and then it gives me a box here to show me what percent I'm looking for. Let's say I'm looking for companies that have a specifically 20 to 21% operating profit margin. I type that in and you can see the list of companies that come up, including some popular companies like Caterpillar and AT&T. Alright, to make my stock price prediction for Nvidia stock, I'm going to use several estimates and assumptions and try and predict where Nvidia stock price could end up. Of course, nobody knows what's going to happen in the future, and it's especially risky making estimates and assumptions. But to counter that risk, I'm going to share with you precisely where I'm getting all of the numbers, and instead of just making one stock price prediction, I'm going to do a scenario analysis so we can get several estimates for where Nvidia stock price could be. That way, instead of trying to pinpoint where the price could be, we can triangulate a range where the stock price could be. And one of the things I'm going to need to make that prediction is Nvidia's earnings per share expectations, both for next year and the growth rate for the next 5 years. So the analysts on Wall Street that are following Nvidia stock, they think its earnings per share will come in at $3.75 next year. Now, I want to highlight something. For Yahoo Finance, they note that next year is 2026, and that's not a typo. Nvidia's fiscal year is different than the calendar year. Nvidia's fiscal year is ahead of the calendar year. So while the calendar year will be 2025 next year, for Nvidia, it will be their fiscal year 2026. I wanted to clear that up right here. Also, you'll notice that the analysts on Wall Street that are following Nvidia stock, they recently raised their expectations for where they think its earnings per share will end up next year, up from $3.43 to up $3.75. So in the last week, the analysts on Wall Street have become even more optimistic about Nvidia's earnings next year. So because I'm making a prediction for the year 2030, I need Nvidia's earnings per share next year, and then I need the growth of those earnings per share that are expected for the next 5 years so that I can forecast earnings between now and 2030. So to do that, I'm pulling the growth estimates from those same Wall Street analysts that are following Nvidia stock. They think it's going to grow its earnings per share at 46.35% per year over the next 5 years. So using those estimates, I can forecast where I think Nvidia's earnings per share will be in 2030, and I'll share that with you in just a little bit. I also need Nvidia's current share price, which as of this recording is $116.92. Nvidia's stock price has followed its upward trend over the last 5 days after hitting some rough patches over the last month and a half. I also need Nvidia's forward price to earnings ratio. You'll notice I'm using the forward 1-year price to earnings ratio, which is 31. Now, importantly, when you're using the forward 1-year price to earnings ratio, you're making a stock price prediction for 1 year before. So, for instance, I'm making my stock price prediction for the year 2030. So I need the earnings per share expected for the year 2031 because I'm using the forward PE ratio, if that makes sense. If there's any questions about that, feel free to comment down below. All right, so now that we have all the numbers we need for our estimates, we can go ahead and make our stock price prediction for Nvidia stock. And you'll notice here, I've got the EPS here for 2025 that I got from Yahoo Finance. I shared that with you. This is next year's EPS estimate for Nvidia stock. And I got the growth rate for Nvidia stock from that same Wall Street analyst consensus estimate at 46.35%. So to get the earnings per share estimate for the year 2031, I take my 2025 earnings per share estimate, I apply the 46% growth rate for 6 years, and that brings me to an estimated earnings per share of $36.94 for Nvidia stock in the year 2031. All right, so now let me point your attention to the right-hand side of this scenario analysis. You'll see the earnings per share of $36.94. If I apply that forward PE multiple of 31 that I got from Y Charts, where the stock price is currently trading for, and I apply that to the $36.94 EPS estimate, I get a stock price for Nvidia in the year 2030 of $1,100.45. That's right, I have Nvidia's stock price returning to over $1,000 per share, where it was before the company did their stock split recently by the year 2030. But it's not certain that the company's forward PE ratio will stay at 31. It could increase, and if it increases to 40, then Nvidia's stock price could approach $1,477 per share, nearly 14 times higher than where it is today. But it's also not always going to be good news for Nvidia stock. The forward PE multiple could drop, and if it falls to 28, then the stock price would still be over $1,000 per share at $1,034 by 2030. If the forward PE multiple were to fall even more, down to 20, then Nvidia's stock price would be $738 per share. Not too shabby, a still 7x increase from where it is today. Now, with this scenario analysis, I hope you get the importance of earnings per share. If its earnings per share grows as is expected by Wall Street, it's very, very, very likely that Nvidia's stock price will be at least 3 times higher than where it is today. The key is earnings per share. The key is profits. Investors like profits and stock prices. As much as some investors like to think they don't trade on fundamentals, sometimes it seems as some stocks don't trade on fundamentals like profits and cash flow. Over the long term and over a vast majority, stocks trade on their fundamentals, on how much profits they generate. And so if Nvidia's profits do indeed increase by 46% per year over the next 5 years, it's going to make Nvidia stock investors very, very wealthy, to be sure. Now, that's the big question mark, is the earnings per share. Will it indeed grow at 46% over the next 5 years? If it does, then no question Nvidia's share price will be much higher than where it is today. But going to my specific forecast, which one of these 4 scenarios do I think is most likely? Where do I think Nvidia's stock price is most likely to end up by the year 2030? Well, I think it's going to be in the range of a forward PE of 28 to 31. And I think the share price ends up somewhere between $1,000 per share and $1,100 per share by the end of 2030. Thank you for watching this video. I truly appreciate it. I know there's a lot you could be doing with your time and a lot of other videos you could be watching. So I truly appreciate that you chose to watch this one. If you want to see more videos just like this, hit the subscribe or the like button. They'll both help me make more videos just like this one. Thank you again.